going to talk cannabis on a Friday. Hey, everybody, welcome. It is Wayward Media. Wayward.media presents Because Cannabis with myself, B.C. Wehman, Dustin Kava. I always go here.
Good morning.
But it's always here. Like, I always point my thumb to the right because that's where you are in my brain. But it's always left thumb. Got to go left thumb because that's where Dustin Kava usually sits on the screen. Hey, Dustin, how are you on this Friday morning? Friday afternoon.
I'm hurting this morning.
It's a dreary, rainy, miserable Friday here in Northeast Ohio, so it's hard to tell what time of the day it is. It's Friday, though. Brand new shows. How you feeling today, sir?
I am hurting today. It has been a painful week. But you know what? Before I get into why I'm such a baby, I literally just listened to a Stuff You Should Know episode on to the left or to the right. What is the predispositions for people? And what they found out was that it's a location thing, meaning that people in the UK and people in Australia, they tend to always go to the left. And the people in the United States have this tendency to want to go clockwise or to the right. And it's like, and that's a predisposition. That's like their movements in the supermarkets, the way they want to turn naturally on the road, the way that, you know, if they were to be walking down a sidewalk and, you know, you have both sides of the sidewalk there, they will naturally choose the opposite side of us. And it's one of those weird things about, like, you know, yeah, you pointed to the right, to the left, whatever it was, but that's our disposition in the United States, actually, is to naturally do that.
That makes sense. I'm a weird bit of a soul because I'm right-handed. I'm naturally right-handed. I write with my right hand. I kick with my right foot, but I throw left-handed. So it's really, I'm a little thrown off. I'm not quite ambidextrous, which I know that makes it sound right away.
I can't like...
I'll give you the quick backstory.
I can't visualize how that works.
Well, let me give you the quick backstory. I know we're here to talk about cannabis, as we are every Friday here on Wayward Media. Follow us socially at MeetWM. Learn more about our ambidextry or lack thereof. But you got to talk real. Haven't seen Dustin in a week, so it's always wonderful to catch back up. So, and maybe some of you out there had this issue. Maybe you're going through it now. I played sports. You know, as a kid, we've talked sports on this show before, several of our great past episodes, talking sports, combining cannabis, all those things. So I was pretty heavily involved in athletics as a younger lad. And so I played baseball, like little league style baseball. And apparently I was terrible. Like, that's the only thing I can gather, because obviously it's a long time ago. I'm almost 50 years old. I was probably like 10. So we were talking 4 decades ago that this monumental moment in my life happened. And it may not have happened as I'm about to tell you, because it was 40 freaking years ago. So the details, fuzzy. You know why? Because cannabis, right? So, I mean, it's a little fuzzy in there about what happened 4 decades ago. So apparently I was terrible at baseball, and I was throwing, and I think the coach was like, man, maybe you're left-handed. Oh, maybe I am left-handed, because I was so bad at throwing that he thought, this kid can't be throwing with his correct arm. So they started me throwing left-handed, and I remember my dad being just slightly confused because I had a mitt, which to throw right-handed, I'd have a mitt on my left hand, correct? So we had to go get an opposite mitt, and no one in my family is left-handed. So we didn't have any mitts that would fit a right hand with the thumb and the fingers lined up. So I have to go through. So since that moment, I throw left-handed. I throw disc golf. We talk about disc golf. You know, I love disc golf. I throw disc golf left-handed. But here's the cool part, I guess. When I throw, for example, darts, that's right-handed. So I can actually throw both ways on disc golf. I've learned to basically throw right-handed and left-handed.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I can do a little bit of both.
It changes the game, too.
It's just one of those interesting things, right? All that said, who knows what side you're on? There's a lot of people on different sides of the world today, politics, left and right stuff. We'll talk a little bit of politics today. Actually, we're going to talk some interesting stuff here today on Because Cannabis. You see the title in the bottom screen. Today's episode, Big Business and Bad Banking. That's right, big business and bad banking is what we're going to talk about today. You know the deal. Every Friday, brand new shows of Because Cannabis on Wayward Media, on wayward.media. Subscribe. If you're listening to it right now on audio, maybe you're checking us out on iTunes, on Google Play, on Spotify, follow us. If you're listening to us on YouTube, if you're checking out the show, if you're enjoying some of the great guests, Dr. Humat Kumar Bid, T-Dog, we had him last week. We got Greg Selby from Science LED coming next week. I mean, we got some great guests, really exciting people lined up. If you want to know who's coming next, follow. You saw Dustin. Check the hand. We're down. We don't know left, right, down. Click, click. Hit the follow button. Be sure to leave us some comments, leave us some reviews. Let us know. Let us know what you like. If you have a guest that would like to be on the show, let us know. If you think you're qualified to be on the show, let us know in the comments. We would really appreciate it. That's all the good stuff, Dustin. Follow us at MeetWM. So that means, let me clear my throat here. We're ready to go. Talk some big business, talk some bad banking. There are some news and notes. Had an interview last week with Todd Pearl. As I said, got Greg Selby from Science LED joining us next week. But in the meantime, Dustin, since we last spoke, and cannabis has been sitting for a while. Since the November of 2020 election, cannabis has been sitting at 36 medicinal states and 18 adult use states, 2 territories, really 4 medicinal and District of Columbia. It gets a little confusing there. But 18 major adult use states. That's where we've sat. No really adult use states on the horizon until, I don't know if you saw this, Dustin, just recently, the teeniest, tiniest of all of our states, little Rhode Island, went all in through a legislative act, went all in and enacted, and is just waiting to be signed by the governor. They now become, through a pretty wide margin here, you can see a 55-16 vote, and they've had medical since 2006. So Rhode Island, 2024 sales begin. Don't run to Rhode Island today. It always takes about 2 years for the state to get running. So, Dustin, you see that? We have 19 states now. We're inching, that's the word I wanted to say, inching closer and closer to having half the country have legalized adult use cannabis. And we'll talk about some medicinal states here soon. But 19 adult use states, teeny tiny Rhode Island. How you feeling about that?
Unbelievable. I really won't need to see that number hit to over the majority, because I think when that happens, a whole gamut of other arguments get to actually happen federally. So to me, we're so close. And if I also think that, for a little state like Rhode Island, it almost didn't make sense just to have the medical program. I mean, there's only so many patients within the state, and I think the state is, had a little bit easier time kind of navigating it because of that, and navigating the medical market. And I think, recreation kind of is not going to be too bad for them either. I think that, they're pretty simple.
I think so. I mean, I think, once again, they have the standard usual arguments going back and forth. If you glance over this article, and this is from WPRI.com, but tons of articles on it. You have the Republicans and the Democrats arguing back and forth, people doing the weird opposing because, well, now if we legalize cannabis, there's going to be everyone stoned on the road. Like all of a sudden they're all going to buy and they're all going to be, and they're still like, no, it's technically illegal, and we're getting closer and closer, by the way, to roadside detection of cannabis, like a quick detection of it. That's coming in probably sooner than we think. So don't be shocked. One of the other side effects is more states legalize, other people will find ways to detect and do those things faster as well, right? Research scientifically is not always for the good cause. Don't forget that. Scientific research being allowed legally doesn't always mean it's pro-cannabis. It can be the other way around for that. So, yes, Rhode Island moving forward. Like I said, you said it. They've had medicinal for a long time. So that means, by the way, just one state left in all of New England that does not have legal adult use cannabis. All that leaves now is little New Hampshire. And then once we get New Hampshire on board, everyone else in the entirety of New England will have legalized adult use cannabis. I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about.
So the entire population of Rhode Island is 1 million, a little over 1 million. And that article stating that they will have a maximum number of 33 stores.
I saw that, right? It's so, well, once again, there's some, and I want to talk to you. I'll show you, well, in a minute, we'll talk about some other medicinal states and some of the peculiarities. I'm not even talking English today. Peculiarities between them. And so, yeah, I'm just reading that now. 33 stores for 1 million people seems small. Well, how many people does Ohio have?
Well, that's another question, and let's also look up, the general size of Rhode Island is like 1,200 square miles. So let's, if you, it's going to be interesting to see what is the average distance that, someone in Rhode Island would have to drive in order to hit one of their 33 stores. Wow, Ohio has 11.6 million people.
And
So
we
we
have
have
60 right now with 70 on board. So let's say we have 130, give or take, in the next year or two, is what they're aiming for.
Ohio's got 12 times the population, and Rhode Island is going to have anywhere between half and a quarter of the amount of stores. So it's a lot more stores per patient, and even per radius, mile wise, you're talking a pretty extraordinary thing. Like, no matter what, Rhode Island would be able to get within about 25 miles and you'd be able to hit your shop. And when
Take a look at what's highlighted on screen real quick. There are only 3 medicinal dispensaries operating in Rhode Island right now. They only have 3 stores total. And as of right now, they're only going to have 6 up to the state lottery. This allows for a maximum of 33, but chances are when they open in 2024, there'll be no more than 9 because they're only doing 3 and then 6 from a lottery. So they only have 3 right now. They've had 3 since 2006.
Okay.
So I'm going to say, I think about the Ohio patients and how much they fight back against the state and push and push and push, which is why part of the reason we ended up with these additional 70 dispensaries, which were announced. We talked about that recently on a past episode of Because Cannabis. So that's part of the reason that they got these 70 stores is because the patients go. I'm driving hours. There were some sections of the Upper West portion of Ohio, like 8 counties, which have zero, and so for at least an hour drive. So since 2006, we're talking 1 million people. The typical penetration rate for medicinal patients is just around 1%. So that's probably, of 1 million people, it's what, 100,000 people maximum that are patients. It's probably less than that. I don't know. I'm talking, see if you can find the Rhode Island medicinal patient registration penetration percentage. That's got to be somewhere. There's charts are out there. So, Ohio's is like 0.8%. I know that for a fact because it's 11 million people. We're about 140,000 active patients in the state of Ohio, give or take. 250,000 total signed up, but only about 140 are registered right now today. So they've been going good. My point being, for the last 16 years with 3 medical dispensaries. So I think they'll be all right.
You don't even want to know the patient numbers. This is unbelievable.
How many patients has Rhode Island? So they have 1 million total population, right?
I cannot believe this. I don't even know. I gotta make sure that this number is right. Who am I getting this
check.
from?
We got mics. We got fact check. Hold on. We're learning on the fly here, by the way.
Which is MPP.org, which is the Marijuana Policy Project.
Yeah, okay. I get stats from there. Sure, I would trust their stats.
Okay, we're talking Rhode Island with 1.05 million population is coming in at, God, I want you to guess this first. How many patients do you think are in that state?
Let me tell you, because I do know some stats. So let's go. Let's talk a little stats here. So I know for a fact that Oklahoma, we talked about Oklahoma a lot. We love Oklahoma here because cannabis has about a 4.5% penetration rate. They're the highest in the country. Florida has the highest medicinal sales at about almost $1 billion in 2021, but they only have about a 2% medicinal penetration rate, right? So Oklahoma is 4.5%, give or take, the highest in the country. Ohio, I know, is about 0.8%. So Pennsylvania, for example, is at 2.2. I just did a bunch of stat research. So I'm totally, not like I know this all the time, but it's in my brain. So Pennsylvania's 2.2 and Michigan's about 1.5%. So just to tell you our surrounding areas, that's where we're at. So Rhode Island with 1 million people, I can't see it. I mean, Oklahoma, it's got to be, I'm just going to go lame. I'm Price is Rightness. It's got to be 1.5%, just because it's just, I don't know, but that seems like a lot of people. That's my guess. 1 to 1.5%. I mean, that's a cop out because that's what everyone is. So that's my guess, though. That seems like a lot. I'm going to go 0.6. I'm going to go low. I think it's low. 0.6. So I'm going 0.6%. That's my final answer. Lock in. Ding, ding.
19,000 patients. So we are actually...
That's way less than 0.6% then. That's really... Well, that's why there's only 3 stores and no one cares. This is going to be the least exciting legalization effort ever because there's only about 25,000 people that give a flying screw that cannabis was legalized in Rhode Island. Plus, every other surrounding state but New Hampshire already has it. So if you were a
Okay.
Rhode Island, you could easily go to Massachusetts or Vermont or
Yep.
Maine, whatever part. And now you have New Jersey, which is near Rhode Island, and you have Delaware. I mean, so if you were a Rhode Island, I don't know what they're pronounced properly. What are you people from Rhode Island called? We got to get people from states in here. We're getting out there. You could easily get it already. I mean, the state sounds like you could take a car ride and be across it. 1,200 square
What
miles.
states am I allowed to cross state boundaries with? Are there any
With cannabis?
states
No,
that I'm allowed? Yeah.
no, not legally. Now, there's some interesting parts. You have state by state reciprocation for medicinal licenses.
That's what I was asking. Yeah. But not for patients, medical.
You are a medical patient in that state of Michigan, technically, like say in Ohio. I know this for a fact. In Ohio, technically, you are not legally allowed to transfer your medicinal cannabis across state lines because it's still federally illegal to transport a Schedule I substance, regardless of your medicinal use across state borders. Does it happen every day? Is it happening right now? Yes. Like there's someone in Idaho who just drove to Montana or Washington right now and is making that run across the Idaho border with their weed and is all fired up. So no, I mean, I'm just saying that's what they're doing. Like people in Sandusky are driving to Michigan to get cannabis right now. I mean, they just are. So that's what Rhode Island's
I've definitely
doing, but it's not legal.
I've been to a lot of states that recognize the Ohio card and allowed me to access their medical program. But the caveat there is that I am leaving my medicine in Ohio. I am going to wherever state reciprocates and I am buying it there. And then I am leaving it there before I travel back, But yes, that access to the medicine I've been able to do, but crossing state borders, that's a funny thing. So, in the case of Vermont, my idea, my thing was that if they're surrounded by it, is it just at this point, do you think it's not a revenue, it's not a money thing for them. It's gotta be
it might be a little bit of money thing. It can help boost the small local economy, get some more agricultural going. I mean, obviously it's not a huge pressing issue for them. But it's something that, and they have a pretty relatively high tax. I think it was like at about 15%, not that high, but about 15% excise tax. So it's going to be a small money maker for them. It feels like it was just something to go with because everyone else is. I mean, the whole area is around them. So if you're looking as a government saying, look, people are probably driving across state borders. So why don't I just make it so the 25, 30,000 people that do want it can have it and I can keep it in state. It seems like an easy win because it feels like everyone's like, it's such a small blip on the Rhode Island's radar, for that kind of thing. You know who's probably going to be fired up again, Dustin? I talked in 2020, the fall of 2020 was the last time we saw any ballot initiatives to make forward progress in legalization. And that brought about New York, that brought about Virginia, that brought about I think Connecticut was part of that. It also saw Mississippi get medicinal. It saw South Dakota get medicinal. And South Dakota in November of 2020 became the first state to go all in and become the first state to legalize medicinal and adult use in the same ballot initiative. However, that kind of screwed them. So what happened is South Dakota in 2020, the populace came out. Two separate ballot initiatives happened, one for legalized medicinal cannabis and one for legalized adult use. In record-setting fashion, both passed. Well, the government didn't really approve or like some of the adult use aspects, and so they went and dug into it. Yeah, I'm going to paraphrase here, but they dug into the the deep recesses of the law book and found a wording that did not allow two similar of ilk initiatives to pass on the same ballot. And so they deemed that through a bunch of lawsuits that the medicinal and adult use were too close. So they took adult use off. That said, officially as of a day or two ago, the South Dakotians, I love making up names for these states, the South Dakotians got the amount of signatures needed again. And South Dakota will once again this November be voting to legalize adult use in the state of South Dakota. So we may have, as of November, a 20th state. We were talking about when we get to that halfway point, we may have a 20th state with South Dakota. So that's pretty exciting for there. I don't know if there's any sort of crazy thoughts on that. But while I pull this down, I want to bring up another article about some other states. Any excitement for South Dakota? You finally happy for them? The South Dakotians can get their adult use? Maybe. It's going to be tough. It already passed once. Do you think they come out and pass again?
Well, again, what's the changes? If it had to be changed,
The only change is they had two of the same initiatives on the ballot at the same time, right? So they
Okay,
went
so
back.
you can just take the same initiative, but 2 years later and get it put on and then be fine.
I'm
with the
sure
same
there are
verbiage.
changes to it. I'm going to guess that they probably worked back and forth. You know, I'm sure there's some sort of nuance into there, right? But yes, so their goal was, you know, they kind of win it. They were a little nervous. They kind of government kind of went back and forth, and it was back and forth through lawsuits. Once again, the governor's office is the one that came up. It went all the way to the South Dakota Supreme Court to get this knocked down. But once again, they're back. They got 54% of the vote in 2020, 54% of the, you know, so it was a close 54-46 kind of vote. So now they have to go again. But the problem is, here's the tough part. You got to get all those people back out to the ballot, which can be difficult in a apolitical society that we sometimes live in today. So I'll be interested to see in November. It will be the first time. It's like a double jeopardy situation, right? Where it's going to pass potentially twice. Like, can it pass twice and then get us the 20th state, you know, which would be pretty exciting. One of the reasons I think that we're struggling, Dustin, to get over to the, you know, like 50 states or even that halfway point of 25 is there's a big bulk of states that just aren't ready to go adult use, right? And that, my friend, is the Deep South. The Deep South, red America, as they say. You know, we just talked, Florida has over $1 billion in medicinal sales. That is an enormous number. Very few states do $1 billion in adult use. Mm-hmm. And Florida is pushing $1 billion in medicinal only. Right? We have a lot of states in the South that some are medicinal, but wait till I read you or you see, if you're listening to us on audio, you got to check us out on YouTube every Friday because that's where we show the articles and we read them out and learn together here on Because Cannabis on Wayward Media. Wait till you see some of the weird medicinal rules in the South. I didn't learn some of this. So the South's not as worried. And I'm obviously paraphrasing here, you know, stereotyping, not as worried about legal THC. A lot of the Southern folks and Southern government has gone all in on CBD, has gone all in on the CBD, the industrial hemp. Kentucky is promoting itself as like hemp state. You know, they're trying to take that over. But we will not get to, I think, where you hope we will, or I hope we will, to where it's so many states that we have to get there until this clump that sits in the lower right-hand corner of the United States begins to budge, right? We have the 3 states, Nebraska, Kansas, Idaho, that have no rules, but most of the West is legal. The Midwest is slowly starting to fall in line. The upper Northeast, I mean, we all got all of New England now. You got New York, you got Delaware, you got New Jersey. What the clump that is missing, that percentage that we need to grab, is from the South. Right. So there's a cool article that I found recently on jdsupra.com. It's like a legal website, but it's a really interesting article about an area that has relied on agriculture. Right. The South is known for agriculture, known for cotton, known for tobacco. Right. It's known for growing because it does have rich, fertile soil. But they haven't embraced cannabis. And so this article written on this JD Supra legal website breaks down a lot of the medicinal efforts in there. Well, first that, Dustin, where are you thinking about the South? Got any thoughts on that? And let's talk a little bit about some of these different states and where they sit right now as far as potential legalization efforts.
I think that any state that looks towards the future in terms of innovation and just what can they do to grow is an important thing. I mean, staying in the past because it's tradition or because it's what you've always done or it's because, you know, it never seems to work. And I do think that, you know, hemp is right in line and right up the South's alley. It hits every major talking point and you know, true moral representation of what they've always been about than any other plant I could possibly think of, even more so than tobacco. I really, you know, when as someone who would spend so much time working the land, I would definitely I can't see them not seeing value to the hemp market. And I certainly can't see them not seeing value in the fact that, you know, I'm not going to say it's more sustainable, but anything that's emerging has to be better than something where you're getting subsidized to produce it. And when those subsidies change every year, the corn subsidies will change. The farming has not been profitable historically for a long time, and many agencies have had to step in and kind of back the farmers in such a way to maintain things for, say, national security or for whatever other reason that they can justify that types of subsidy. And in the United States thing, I'm not sure hemp is classified under that same subsidy, but I sure as shit think that the farmers make more per acre than, say, soy or a lot of these other plants.
And it's one of the most per acreage profitable plants, especially, long term in 100 years from now, Dustin, when we are providing to the soil food web and giving back to the cannabis plant as our bodies. Maybe not, but right now, just acreage per, I don't know. Oh God, I'll have to find it at some point. Maybe we'll talk about another show.
I thought it was I hate to put out a number, but my stomach said it was something between $1,000 and like $1,400 per acre, whereas soy is something like $200 to $400 an acre.
Yeah, but just think of how much you buy corn for. Think about the amount of money you spend for each corn cob versus how much money size-wise you spend for cannabis. Right? It's 100. When you spend hundreds of dollars for something that can fit in my hand.
Yeah, but industrial hemp is totally different. Like when if I'm growing hemp for flower and I'm going to smoke it, I'm spacing the plants out far enough that the sun and light, hits.
Sure.
When I'm doing industrial growth, you're planting like 2 or 3 times more per acre of the amount. And you're taking a machine and you're just like clear cutting straight across and all at once. It's a whole different process. So I still think even at that point, you're way more than anything else. So the government isn't necessarily going to subsidize that. But to a farming family who has worked the land and it instills every ounce of value, I think it's perfect. I think it's exactly where some of the innovation needs to happen in some of these southern states, agriculture-wise.
Well, let's talk before we go, and I know we want to talk Safe Banking Act. We want to talk up north in Canada, but let's go through some of these medicinal states. I didn't know some of these things. I learned a lot. I'm going to teach you as we go through.
Yeah, I can't wait.
As we said, every conversation with the South in cannabis starts with Florida, as this article says as well. Like Florida is the biggest player. I was wrong. More than I thought. $1.2 billion is what they did in 2021. Take a look at this, Dustin. 650,000 patients, 22 stores. I did not know this, but recently Florida, about 6 years ago, passed a major act. Florida basically, people complain about Ohio's monopoly. Florida is a monopoly. They're selling license valuations at $55 million for one dispensary alone. So 17 operational medical marijuana centers with 650,000 patients, and they still do over $1 billion. Florida is
650,000 patients.
Florida is purely not adult use, and I don't like to play the political game, but it's 100% because of politics. It's 100%, and we don't need to get into it. There's a lot of terrible things which have happened in the world recently, and politics are getting in the way again and again and again. It's because it's a very conservative leadership. I think that's Governor DeSantis down there. Very conservative leadership, appealing to the conservative nature of it. But the weird part is, right, Florida, obviously, what's its reputation? Skews elderly, where people go to retire. Those people are in their 60s and 70s, and they're like, we don't need your drugs and your reefer madness. But their numbers dictate the opposite, right? Their numbers dictate the opposite. So when Florida goes adult use, when Florida finally does, and they're going to be the first. When they do, it's going to be like a tidal wave of pouring over the South. Everyone's waiting because no other state can do this. But this here, the fact, and I don't know why I'm pointing. You can't even see me if you're listening on audio on iTunes or Spotify. Follow us, subscribe on YouTube, Friday shows, Wayward Media. Florida is frustrating because they want adult use. Florida would be one of the biggest adult use states tomorrow if it legalized. Like literally over $1 billion in their first year. Easy, right? But
so
it's political. It's all
they
political.
They have 30% more patients per population than Ohio has.
Wow.
So... And you're right. And there still is that huge conservative undertone that a lot of the I still don't hear them talking about it as much.
No, they're patients though. It's just they don't talk about it.
Okay, so my question is
it
it the out of residence? Is it the travelers who have their actual residency listed as Florida, but they're really from Ohio or somewhere else? And when, they just are like, we don't give a, like cannabis is fucking legal in my state that I'm coming from. I might as well have my medical card in Florida where, or something. Is it out of state residents that vacation that are
No, it
residents?
can't be. That number, usually the numbers when they talk about the registered patients is from the state itself, right? There's sometimes is out-of-state licensing, but I got to think that Florida probably has at least 600,000 of those are Florida residents. I mean, do they have dual residency? Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. And most people that have dual residencies with Florida will mark it as Florida the residency, the main
I think it's
because
just
of taxes.
don't ask, don't tell. I think it's don't ask, don't tell. With in the senior citizen world, I think it's
totally.
more
Makes
behind
sense.
closed doors. But I'll tell you, I know some folks, I know some people that live down there that are retirees, snowbird type things in Florida. It's not as hush hush as it once were, right? It's becoming, because here's the deal. All right, here's the reality. Anyone out there, I'm getting older. I'm a few years older, almost a decade. How old are you, Dustin? I'm like 20 years older than you, I think. I'm super older. I'm getting up there. Most
You're not 20 years old. Maybe you are.
Aren't you 30?
Maybe.
Something like that?
I'm 36, 35.
All right, I'm 14 years older than you. All right, not bad. The older you get, you know this, you got a bad back, you're ailing, the shit just starts to hurt more and more and more. And at the end of the day, when it push comes to shove, despite your fears, despite your, whatever the Bible tells you, at the end of the day, when stuff hurts, you'll take whatever it means to help ail you, right? To help you feel better. And CBD and cannabis can help people, elderly, feel better. I just think they're not as vocal about it. And the other thing that's interesting, Florida has really big numbers. So Florida is similar to Ohio, where up until 2 years ago, they didn't allow smokable cannabis. That just passed 2 years ago. So Florida's numbers, if you look at their category sales, it's heavy in tinctures and edibles, which are heavy in the senior marketplace. Florida is just quite simply, grandma's not sitting there rolling a fatty. I mean, there's a couple. She's taking a little tincture in her tea. And that's what, so it's not like they're not doing the cannabis, right? That's what I can imagine. They say, I'm not doing the cannabis, Gladys. I'm just having a little drop in my juice, right? That's what we're saying. So I just don't think they're pushing for it because they don't need it. The residents don't need it because everyone can get a medicinal program. It's actually pretty inexpensive comparatively in Florida. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I know compared to like Ohio, it's relatively inexpensive in Florida to get a medicinal license. They've made it so it's pretty easy to get one and it's much cheaper. And so I just don't think Floridians are demanding it. I don't think they're demanding it because they all have medicinal. Like, why not for that aspect? So Florida is where it ends and goes for that part there. We have Arkansas. Arkansas has got about 80,000 medicinal patients right now. They've only had medicinal since 2016. So they're pretty new into the program. I don't think they're anywhere ready to go adult use there. Here's the interesting one. Look at Louisiana. So Louisiana just went medical in 2020. They were one of those ballot initiatives I was talking about, which I knew. Check this out. Only 2 state universities are allowed to cultivate medical cannabis, and they only have a few dispensaries. They only have 2 growers right now in Louisiana, and
it's
all
the
of
university.
them are the universities, which are interesting for that. Like I said, they just started. They got really big complaints about extremely, really expensive prices. I guess they make it pretty easy to get a license. They don't have that, but it's really, it's a small potatoes program for them. Once again, it's legalization to probably shut some people up, but only having 2 universities be able to cultivate and grow. And they only have a total of like 9 pharmacies through the whole state, 9 dispensaries or pharmacies, whatever they call them, broke it up into 9 regions. So that was interesting to see. Do you like that? And I know no one likes the ability for only a couple people to grow, but I mean, does that sound skeevy to you? Or are you like, they're going to grow at a university. It's probably good stuff. It's obviously not an open marketplace, but.
No, I think it's interesting. I think it's a total different dynamic on a market that allows us to see and understand the market as a whole. I mean, I think I like when someone does something that's extreme or outside the box, but I will say that universities growing cannabis isn't a new thing. Florida originally had some pretty interesting CBD stuff, if I can remember correctly, where the only valid CBD or hemp that was able to be bought there and used was from the university in Florida. something like that. And so I know that there have definitely been universities that have had kind of the strong arm on in some locations, but to me, it's very rare. And I also think that adding the research dynamic to this and a different way to kind of make sense of the investment. Universities aren't making money growing weed in this case,
No.
but I can see a university doing really well developing patents for the cannabis industry, licensing them out, and having a sustainable, real foundation
Yes.
for the future for them,
Now you're
So
talking.
I don't know. There's just something with that's so different. And again, it's just like there's part of that's exciting to me. I would like to see is that the only 2 state universities or something in Louisiana, or is that the only 2 that actually wanted to do this?
It has to be. I don't know that information right now, but it has to be some of the only state. They can't be federally funded because they won't touch it. If it's federally funded schools, they have to be almost entirely state-funded schools, which we'll get to here in a second. Let's wrap up these states, and then let's talk banking in our industry. So just real quick, I don't know if you knew this. Do you know what Georgia's medicinal program is? Georgia really is basically a CBD state. They only allow up to oil up to 5% currently. That's all they really have. They've got this act, but nothing's really happened. So currently only in Georgia, you can only get 5% THC, only in oil form. At some point, it may be more available, but that's all Georgia has. Like Georgia passed it in 19, but they've not got past 5% oil. So Georgia's not quite sitting there, which leads us to our last 2 states. Alabama just passed. Like literally, Alabama's not getting up and running. So they passed last year. They're going to be looking at hopefully 12 cultivars. I don't know what their population is. But they're expected in about next fall of 2023 to have medicinal in Alabama, which brings us to Mississippi, the only other state that's got legislation out there. Now, Mississippi, the same year South Dakota passed adult use, and the government said, whoa, bro. Mississippian government did the same thing. They passed, they went, whoa, bro, and they back and forth in court. Eventually, it's going to pass, but hasn't gotten there yet. Once again, it'll probably be another year or 2, which leaves just the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Kentucky of states who are pushing the CBD. CBD is huge in there, but there's no current medicinal or adult use legislation on board in either the Carolinas or Tennessee. So all that said, right, it's that South. When we want to get to, when those regions, when you start to see, everyone listening out there, Dustin Kava, anyone that's following us on Meet WM, when you see the South rise again, which sounds really bad. It just sounds bad optics to say that. When you see the South rise in the cannabis legalization effort, and I've thought about this a lot since reading that article, that's when the country turns. The South will turn our country. I know that sounds weird, and I know people don't like the South, and the conservative nature of the internet hates them, but the South is who you need to go adult use, because when that happens, the government, because that's the big bulk. That's that bulk.
It's more than that. It's like, I look at if the entire United States is an organism, a full organism as one, I kind of look at, California as, is kind of like the eyes towards, the future. And then I see the South as letting you know when you actually get to the destination. And so it's kind of like, California is always looking, oh, guys, the binocular says we're going to be blazing in 20 years nationwide. But the South is like, yeah, man, but I got to walk for 10, 15 years to get there, So, and I think, I like that. I like that, again, the South, there's still places that scare the shit out of me with cannabis. West Virginia.
South Carolina is one of the harshest possession on books on record, even though they have legal. Yeah, don't take Carolina's super strict with their cannabis. Like it's like a few grams will get you potentially in trouble. Really, like a joint. And it's still a joint can get you in major trouble in South Carolina.
And I've seen things where I could definitely bail out on a meth charge in West Virginia, but I certainly cannot bail out on a cannabis oil charge, and I am going to jail for a few months. Like,
yeah, it's a much. And it's very strict.
it's heartbreaking in some regards of that. But yeah, but again, you could see the feet walking, the boots are happening. I thought Oklahoma would be one of the last. So to me, the fact that Oklahoma went in the way it did and is doing what it did, it says that my perception of the way the South looks at the plant is completely wrong. And I really need, to step back a little bit and kind of reassess.
One of the themes through today's episode, Big Business and Bad Banking, Dustin, is kind of legislative, right? People getting involved, people help their opinions preventing things like cannabis legalization, people progressing in our industry. And we've had on the books for the last few years, I don't know, and you know this, but for the last couple of years, the SAFE Act, right? The Safe Banking Act of 2021 has sat on the books. It passed the House in April of 2021, the latest version of it. And it's been sitting for a while. And if you're not familiar with it, basically, it's telling you that you have the ability, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger on screen here. Oops. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. It says you have the ability to, what banks who are able to federally, I'm getting up to, there it is. All right. So right now, most banks are federally insured. As we just talked about, those colleges and stuff are federally insured. And so they're not going to touch federally illegal money. And money made in cannabis, which is federally illegal, is considered federally illegal. It gets really complicated with the state-by-state thing. So the SAFE Act has sat out there for a few years, Dustin. And what the SAFE Act is saying is, look, if your state has legal cannabis, you can go ahead and authorize, deal with your financial institutions and such. And it sat for a while, Dustin, but we have a moment right now, and that's what I wanted to get to, where the Competes Act is right now kind of out there, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. It actually is the United States Innovation and Competition Act of 2021.
Yeah, with China. It's
Yes.
an act that's meant for trade with China.
It's really about super chip semiconductor manufacturing, giving us all these benefits. But what has happened is about a bunch of people from, our Senate and Congress are pushing to piggyback the SAFE Act into the Competes Act right now, which would, kind of spurn, once again, they're looking to push forward, the money to make the country go forward, to give economic growth to the country. So we have the SAFE Act being kind of piggybacked or trying to be mentioned as part of the Competes Act right now, which is about, competing with China, getting cybersecurity out there. Really, it's about chip production, bringing production of superconductor silicone-based chips back to the U.S. So that's sitting out there. We have this Compete sitting out there. That's kind of what's going to get us legal. Are you hopeful that that's there? I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Competes Act and where it's at. Are you excited by that?
No, I'm never excited by any act, but I am always pretty proud.
So
I think, you know what? I really wish that we would have the CIA and FBI, the guys who named their secret missions, name the acts for us, for the politicians. We always got the Heroes Act, the Competes. That's like these simple,
Yes. Very simple acronym. We need something badass, right?
Yeah, I want
the Snap
Project
Act,
Azorian, or Phoenix Fly, whatever. But I
all
really,
these wonderful cultivar names. I feel like we could have Operation Green Crack,
Exactly.
Operation Purple Kush. There's so many awesome names of cultivars. We get T-Dog on here to draw out the the look of it. The war propaganda posters we'll get out there. Green Crack wants you, right? A little point of the thing. Girl Scout cookies want you to join the cannabis army, people. All right, just a little. Come on.
But no, I don't like any. I really don't like the idea when really important acts that really determine the basis for. We talked about how many ancillary businesses there are, and one out of every 100 people or something is associated in the industry. Or, when you can get up to numbers like that, or 1% of GDP is cannabis or something like that. I think it's really important to have really, really well thought out, well-defined legislation for it. And I don't like the idea that, it's just going to be attached to the Heroes Act or be attached to the Competes Act, or be attached to some other coronavirus spending bill, or, they try to go about it a lot of ways. And I think that it's a way to get something to pass without having to really have the conversation that is divided. And I think if there is something that's divided on this, we really need to hash it out. And I'm getting confused, I'm really getting confused between all of them. And that's the last thing that the industry needs. The industry needs clarification in a lot of ways. And the last thing we need is to be, confused about what is or what isn't.
They just keep pushing. I mean, there's other ones out there. There's the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act. There's all these different legalization efforts, different people pushing it. Once again, I think it's still, and I love your analogy for the South and walking and stuff, but I still think that's a part of it, right? I think it's just trying to get that southern area going, trying to get them up and ready and excited for legalization. I think once we get there, I think we can go. Though sometimes, we got a couple business and banking things I want to talk about here as we wrap up the show, Dustin. Sometimes we get all excited about legalization. We get all excited about the prospect of new businesses in countries, like Canada in 2018 legalized cannabis, and everyone's like, hell yeah, the Great White North, and Bryan Adams and Rush and Bare Naked Ladies and all these other people. Canada, Justin Trudeau is awesome. And he had some major players roll into that. Canada was legal. They had exportation. They're providing Mexico and the Netherlands and all that stuff. And so you had two big companies, Aurora Nordic and Canopy Growth, which really put the stranglehold early on in the Canadian cannabis marketplace. You had a few other companies like CannaHealth, by the way, which early on was the third biggest player, but they had so many illegal grows and fines that they eventually had destroyed $70 million worth of crop and almost destroyed the Canadian stock market and cost 200 people their job, right? So they kind of screwed up. And so what's happened was Aurora, Canopy just kept building and building and building and building and exporting and exporting and exporting. And even Bruce, I forgot his name. It's not Bruce Greenwood. That's an actor. The former CEO of Canopy Growth, Bruce something or other, I lost his name in my brain. Was fired like a year ago because all their money was spent in international expansion and building and building. And much like a state like California, which predicted they'd have like $80 billion of legal cannabis, and they're doing good. It's $7 billion, much like Washington, which has piles and piles of cannabis that you can't give it away there. There's so much. The wholesale pound in Washington is like $340 for a pound on a commercial level. Like, how cheap it is out there? You cannot do that. So what happens in these states that go super legal, or in a country like Canada that gets quickly dominated over there, is growth. And what happens after massive growth and when the marketplace regulates? We talked about this already in a couple of shows. What happens when the marketplace regulates? Well, now you have companies start to close. And so the last few weeks have seen articles ripe with Aurora and Canopy both beginning to shut down facilities, beginning to sell facilities off, right? Fraction. Pennies on the dollar. Now, it sounds like it's dire in the state, but I just saw a report right before we went live today that Canada just had a record-setting March. So the March sales numbers are in, which we could assume the April numbers are in. So Canada's sales are pretty good. Like, the patients are there. What's happening behind the scenes, and we'll talk
but
it's behind the scenes stuff. They're having some problems there, right? They're not making profit.
No, these guys, I mean, you gotta...
There's three farms that Aurora shut down in the last month.
It has nothing to do with the consumables, though. Oh. Do you know that,
educate me.
I mean, think about the way that these corporations look to expand. The first thing that they do is try to vertically integrate every operation, every portion of their business, right?
Yes.
So you're talking expansion that does not just on a cultivation level, like, oh, we need a 45,000 square foot warehouse to do this in. I picture when I watched them expand, I was watching them buy up certain real estate of dispensaries and stuff like that. I was watching them buy CBD brands for way more money than they ever should. I was watching them go in, the guys that did this, the guys that used public money and went public to do this expansion knew exactly what the hell they were doing. And the reason why they expanded in the way they did was because they never ever paid the money to buy these companies. What they did was they bought them out of share value and stock prices for what the new corporation was going to be as they absorbed them. And then they put certain locks on them and saying things like, you can't sell your stock for 2 years. Well, in the meantime, Aurora and Canopy can do whatever the fuck they want with those assets and destroy whatever the hell they want. So, in certain regards, I'm not just going to talk bad saying that like the whole industry expanded wrong. But what I'm saying is they took their level of expansion off of every other industry that they've ever done, applied it to cannabis, and expected it to be the same thing. I have watched other huge cannabis organizations that are not the cultivating side that went towards the dispensary side, and they never once saw themselves as a dispensary company. They found themselves as a real estate company. And they were buying up all the real estate that they knew was in areas where they could get licenses for dispensaries to pay off the real estate. And I've also watched huge amounts of these companies fail later on because I've seen this process fail on the West Coast because of, it's weird. It's like the mob mentality of that expansion, of how you actually write on the books, the way that money works is really, really complicated. And I've watched some of the most amazing and powerful and unbelievably public investors go down in flames because of how that expansion worked and the way the books ended up actually being. I've also watched, I see that across the way as they were using that model. And the truth is I think in a lot of ways, a lot of these people have it wrong. Going back to like this real estate mentality, I want to bring up another article from MJ
I think I
Biz.
just brought it up here on
This is perfect. This actually says it all. Marijuana businesses raise millions of dollars by cashing out of their real estate through sale leaseback deals.
All right. So what does that mean? Like I see the headline and it sounds a bit, I could tell you just in reading it, and we'll read the article, help me learn about it. It sounds a bit skeevy. It sounds like they're doing like legal loopholes and like playing around with money. So what does that say? Like I read that marijuana business.
You talked so much about the Safe Banking Act and that. Think about finances and in terms of starting a cannabis company. I cannot typically go to a normal avenue for funds, right? I can't go to a normal bank and get a loan.
Correct. Yes.
There's a whole nuance to it.
Yes.
Because of that, the way the industry has worked is it doesn't take on the debt that it normally once did. So the actual debt within the industry is like less than 5% or something crazy.
Really?
Yeah. And so, like it's quite a low number, but that's not to say that there still aren't growing pains. These guys are vertically integrating and they are hemorrhaging cash because they're making bad decisions, but the way that they can get that cash is harder. Okay. So what I'm saying here and what is being done is all these people who saw the real estate as the only investment for the company are actually saying, we got this wrong. We're going to sell our land to someone else and we're going to rent that land back from them. So instead of us owning it, instead of us not paying rent every month and a mortgage or whatever the fuck it is on that piece of property, and not claiming that as an asset value, we're actually going to clear that asset off our books, provide a much larger capital to grow with sustainably for the next couple years, not take on the same amount of debt that we once did, but have a monthly payment and a different working out of the funds. And so this is what I actually see happening, and this is where I see Canada and people down the line, that if they don't start making smart decisions with the way they vertically integrate, if they don't stop spending enormous amounts of money on artist promotional sponsorships and brands just for brand name value, and spending $100 million for the Cheech hemp line because it has Cheech on it, and legitimately thinking about the business in a different way, I think that we're going to start seeing a shift in this. And this proved it to me. I was thinking that for a long time, but this article that I had just read was like, holy shit, this is exactly in line with what my stomach's been feeling.
Yeah, and this article, which once again from mjbizdaily.com, talks about like this is pretty common in other industries, right? And other retail spaces, it even mentions casinos. Like this is how they kind of start their funding. And so it lists a bunch of, it's funny, most of these are US based ones, but the kind of in Illinois, which seems like this is really popular in Illinois and California
passion
as well.
follows this. If you can imagine a big corporation who sees their cannabis as a real estate opportunity and not a medicine or something that they're producing of quality for the patient, and then you take an owner of that cannabis company and they're saying, like, we don't give a fuck about real estate. We don't care about any of the other nonsense. What I love is the growing, and that's the process that I'm going to stick with and keep doing. I think it changes the tunnel vision of that organization a bit. And I kind of like that. It's going to be interesting to me to see what happens in those states.
It sounds like, once again, and I think this is part of what this industry, and it seems like we've grown up, but really we're newbies, right? We've only been doing adult use for 8 years now. We've been doing medicinal for 24. I mean, we're not that old, right? We're 1996. So coming up on our 30-year anniversary of legalized medicinal sales. Next year, our 2024 will be our 10-year anniversary of adult use sales. It seems like, and I think we run into this, and this is what I think the next decade will bring, you've had it funded and started in the beginning by cannabis. People that know the plant and the flower. In the last, especially 10 years since adult use has happened, you get more and more traditional business folks in there, and it seems like, in the coronavirus COVID era, that 2019 to 20, the industry had a boom, right? It really shot up. Got on the radar. I think, as you said, you have more business-minded strategies like the sales leaseback program, which that article even talked about how, the cultivators, the growers are like, what? They're like, why are you selling my property? And they're like, no, nothing changes. It's a bookkeeping thing. But they're like, no, I don't want to. I own these plants, right? Yes. They're getting a little paranoid because they feel like they lose their rights. So I think it is, just like in any industry, but this one seems to be, there's going to be a collision at some point, and I don't know if it's going to be catastrophic, but the cultivators versus commercialism, right? And we're there right now, but we're still, in my opinion, I think we're still led by plant people, right? We're not really led by business bad guys yet. We're not really we have it there, and I know there's big players, and I know that, but you saw even companies like Aurora Nordic, they're run by cannabis people. They're trying to think of it, but now they're like, whoa. We built and by the way, that facility they built for $250, they sold for $38 million. So that $250 million sold for $38 million, and you consider the Canadian dollar right there, so even worse. It's just been cannabis people, and now you got the business, and so I think what happens, and we'll end on this. I think me and you get a little excited about that because we kind of get the business part, and we think it's good for the industry. I think a lot of cannabis people, right? Plant people, we'll call them, people who live and die by the holistic nature and the medicine and all that. I think they're nervous about this because they feel it's going to take it away. And I am the opposite. I think it opens it up. It makes it free. It's probably going to bring in more home grow. And then bigger business allows you to have better access. I think. That's where I'm at. I know some people may lose out, but I think there's still, and like beer, like we have Budweiser, but there's like 85 billion craft beer people like out there. You can still have Cheech and Willie and Snoop, but you can also have Joe Bob's special strain that he only grows on his little tiny farm in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, right? You can still have that, and I think you will. And I think, much like beer and other things, you're going to see people support that person, right? You have people that go to McDonald's, and you have people that only go to like the mom and pop burger stand. So I don't know. I'm excited by it, but I think growers and cultivators get scared sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. This is an awesome episode.
All right, really big business and bad. It was a good episode, right? Kind of, it's always interesting. I do like some of these news update episodes that we have going on because there's a lot to catch up on always in the cannabis industry. Next Friday, interview show. We got Greg Selby from Science. That's S-Y. Oh my gosh, I forgot.
Nah, don't even try it here. You're not doing it here.
We misspell it several times in the show next week if you want to do that. But Science LED, Google them. Science LED. We talked about penetration in Dustin in the beginning of the show and light penetration. Science LED is looking to solve that problem that commercial growers have with LED lights, is they don't have the penetration rate, they don't have the brightness, but with their new optic technology, they in really upgradable formats, it's going to be exciting to learn. So Greg Selby, Science LED next week. We'll see. We got some great interviews lined up coming into June. I'm really excited with Wayward Media. Wayward.media. Check it out. We'll get some updates going on the website soon. Follow us, subscribe to us, listen on audio, subscribe to us on YouTube. New shows every Friday. They follow a couple weeks on Mondays on audio. Don't forget, Meet WM socially, MEET. WM. Dustin Kava. It's been a day. It's been a good day talking big business, talking bad banking. We got Lights up next week. We'll have to think of a clever alliteration-filled name for that show. Greg Selby, Science LED next week. Don't forget to check out some of our great past shows as well. Dustin, as always, have a wonderful week. Any parting words here before we sign off for the day? You are muted on your parting words. Are you serious?
How the hell did that happen?
I don't even know how that happened. I'm trying to just let you talk so I can load up the outro music.
The only thing I wanted to say was I want
me.
everybody to be bold. Truly, I want today, this week, this weekend, you know, as you go through the next 7 days of your lives, I just be bold. This is the week to be bold.
I love it. All right, go be bold, everybody. Later.